My brothers and sisters, the Great Commandment is a term that is used to describe what Yahushua says in Matthew 22:36 through 40, Mark 12:28 through 34, and Luke 10:27. In these accounts, Yahushua is asked what the most important thing for people of Yahuwah to do. His answer is brilliant. In essence, what Yahushua does is distill the entire scripture into one commandment. Well, really, it's two commandments combined into one. But this passage of scripture should be a foundational mark for every follower of Yahushua. It deserves a closer look. 3 Besoras record Yahushua talking about the Great Commandment. There are small variations in each of the accounts, but the main details are the same. We will primarily focus on Matthew 22:36 through 40. When we read the scriptures, it is important to read it in context. That means that we read the verses before and after. This gives us a better picture of what is happening. In Matthew 22, before and after the Great Commandment, Yahushua is enthralled in a heated conflict with the religious leaders. They are throwing question after question at him, trying to trap him in his answers. As Yahushua continues teaching and the religious leaders keep asking questions, a common theme unfolds. They ask, Yahushua answers, and they are astonished. They can't trip him up. He continually answers perfectly. This is making the religious leaders look foolish, and they are getting angry. In the coming chapters of Matthew, we will see them get more and more aggressive at trying to stop Yahushua. The context of the Great Commandment is one of building tension, a widening gap between Yahushua and the religious. What's clear is they have different agendas. The religious want to keep the power for themselves and are placing unnecessary burdens on people. Yahushua came to love and set free. They are at odds. It's in this context that we see Yahushua gives us these new famous words. So, what is the greatest commandment in the scriptures? After a series of failed attempts to trip Yahushua up, the religious leaders select an expert in the law as their spokesman. This guy knew his stuff. He was both an expert in theology and law, and he steps up to test Yahushua and prove his quality. The Pharisee asks Yahushua a controversial question that was commonly debated among religious experts. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the Torah? Now, the Mosaic law contained 613 commandments. It would be nearly impossible for one to perfectly keep all these laws. So typically, the religious would divide the laws into the heavy, more important, or light, less important. The Pharisees taught the Yehudim that they needed to follow all the laws, but to pay closer attention to the heavy ones. In essence, what this lawyer is asking is, which one of the heavies is most important? Now remember, this is a hotly debated topic. The religious leaders are split. They don't have an answer, and they certainly don't expect Yahushua to nail it. But he does. Yahushua answers, love Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the Torah and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Yahushua's answer comes from Deuteronomy 6:5 and Leviticus 19:18. And what he's saying is, The greatest commanded isn't a single commandment, rather two that are tied together. You cannot have one without the other. The terms Yahusha uses, heart, soul, and mind, are used to cover the whole person. In other words, Yahusha is saying that we are to love Yahuwah with our whole being. But that's not all there is to the Great Commandment. Matthew 22:38 tacks on an "and" that serves to clarify how we live this out. The first command is great because it is primary, but the second is equal in character and quality. You cannot untie these two from one another. As we love Yahuwah with our whole being, we must love our neighbors. You cannot do one without the other. The rest of the Old Testament hangs on these two commandments. All the other Torah deal with specific applications of one or the other of these two commands. The prophets consistently stress the importance of heart reality with Yahuwah and genuine love for one's neighbor. Without these two commandments, the Old Testament lacks unifying summaries. These are the most important commandments, but they are not the only ones. So, what is the greatest commandment in the scriptures? Love Yahuwah, love others. Everything else in the scriptures flows from these two commandments. This was revolutionary. Yahusha brilliantly simplified and explained what we are to do. Everything else is just commentary on how we can love Yahuwah and love those around us. That is what we are to do. These are our marching orders. So, how do we live out the greatest commandment? It's important that we don't lose sight of our motive to live out the great commandment. We don't do this to earn salvation, but in response to. We love because we were first loved. I see far too many claimed believers running around trying to do the right things to earn their keep. Unfortunately, many called out assemblies have taught this, that we need to do what Yahuwah says so that he will love us, accept us, and save us. But the scriptures teaches a different approach. We don't love to earn love. We love because we are loved. With the proper motivation in mind, let's look at how we can practically live out the great commandment. When Yahusha says to love Yahuwah with all your heart, soul, and mind, he's saying how loving Yahuwah with every single aspect of who we are. No part of our life should be left out. Maybe that seems a little demanding, and it is. Two things to keep in mind. First, Yahuwah has given us the free will to decide to follow him or not. We are not forced. Second, it's for our benefit. When we live for ourselves, it never produces what we hope. Be honest with yourself. That part of your life that you haven't given over to Yahuwah, is it life-giving or life-draining? When we ignore what Yahuwah says is best, it doesn't lead to a full life. The only way to get the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and goodness that Yahuwah promised is to give our lives fully to him. Those who choose to follow Yahusha should submit every aspect of their life to Yahuwah so that they can experience all that he has for them. Again, this isn't to earn anything. This is in response to what Yahusha has done. He's proven his love and commitment to us. He's shown us that he deeply cares about us. Now it's our turn to show our trust that what he says for us is indeed what is best. Our love for Yahuwah should not stop with Yahuwah. It should flow to those around us. You cannot love Yahuwah while neglecting those around you. While most will certainly agree with the second piece to the Great Commandment, living it out is another story. Some people are easy to love, others not so much. And we are called not to just love our friends, but also those who are difficult to love, lest we forget that we aren't so easy to love either. Yet Yahuwah still loves us. Our love for Yahuwah should be evident in how we treat those around us, including our enemies. This is what Yahusha says will be the marker for the true believer. We shall be known for our love for one another. We are to take the love that Yahuwah has shown us and bring it to the world around us. The beauty of Yahusha's words is their simplicity. He sums up the entire scripture in a way no one else could. But that's not to say the Great Commandment is easy. It's simple to understand, but it takes a lifetime to master. And that's where Yahuwah's grace comes in. We will all struggle and constantly screw this up. But Yahuwah is faithful. He will lift us up when we fall and help us look more like him each day. We should continually strive to submit every area of our life to Yahuwah and love those around us as a response to what Yahuwah has done for us. We will never be perfect on this side of heaven, but we will make progress. Shalom.